welcome to another edition of ESPN FC Live on this fine Friday. I would just like to preface that I absolutely begged to not do this chat, but here I am with Stevie Nicol in all his Liverpool red of all people to talk about Manchester United, Stevie, because what a week it has been for the Red Devils, as well as Ruben Amorim after that loss in the League Cup to Grimsby Town. So much so that everyone is calling for everyone's heads, as per usual, when it is a massive, what feels like a rock bottom for Manchester United. But the truth is, Stevie, over the last 10 plus years, there's been a lot of rock bottoms for Manchester United. But now we're questioning how much lower can they really go, because this feels like an all-time low. And before we get into how this can affect Ruben Amorim's tenure at Manchester United, let me start right there. Did this loss to Grimsby Town feel like the newest low for United?
Absolutely. You know, they can go lower. They could lose to a non-league side, because Grimsby are as close to that as it's possible without actually being non-league. Listen, I'm old enough to remember United getting relegated the 1973-74 season. So it's not quite that low yet. But my goodness, if they continue to play the way they did against Grimsby and continue to lose games, then, I mean, it almost seems impossible, but that's how bad this team is. It could be possible.
You know, when we were on the show on ESPN FC, Mark Ogden, our colleague, came on and he said now, after looking at Grimsby, you just look at Manchester United and you feel like they can realistically lose to everyone or anyone as well. Do you feel like it's gotten to that point?
Well, it has, and you know, depending on how you want to look at it, fortunately or unfortunately, they're at home to Burnley. Now, you would suggest that it's fortunate, because Burnley, no question, are prime candidates for relegation. I'll be surprised if they don't go down. But the unfortunate part of that is if United perform the way they did against Grimsby, then actually Burnley could win at Old Trafford this coming weekend. So it depends which way you want to look at it. But either way, any Man United player, fan, anybody with a connection there is going into this game against a team that seemed doomed for relegation, unsure whether they're going to win it or not.
Well, one of the questions now that everybody is asking is Ruben Amorim still the right man for the job? Now, look, we know that the buck stops with the manager ultimately. However, we all can agree that Manchester United's problems, as deep as they are, don't really have much to do with Ruben Amorim, considering the problems now, but the real deep-rooted problems at Manchester United have existed, and we have seen them play out under a number of different managers, where we have talked about Man United hitting another rock bottom, Man United hitting another rock bottom. We've seen this happen for the last 10 years under different managers. Now, the thing with Ruben Amorim, which we've spoken about as well on the show, is just his inability to, or his unwillingness to change his tactics and be stubborn with them when clearly they're not working. So what do you make of that situation with Ruben Amorim?
Well, I don't see how there's anybody can possibly look at Ruben Amorim and look what he's done since he got to the club and think that they've done anything other than get worse. I mean, you know, those other managers you're talking about, you know, Mourinho and Moyes and Ten Hag, and this low makes those other supposed lows pretty high. I mean, Ruben Amorim has done absolutely zero to convince anybody that he is the right man for this job. I mean, you talk about the system. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the fight seems to have gone out of Manchester United players. That would be the worrying thing. And when that happens, there is absolutely no other way to go than to bring in a new coach, a new voice, something that will give the players a heartbeat again. Because right now, they're just going through the motions. Their heads are in a daze. And all of this is because of Amorim. Amorim's tactics, Amorim, the way he sets them up, what he's doing in training, the way he's speaking to them. Because he clearly isn't doing, you know, a coach is supposed to put players in a position to succeed. That's part of your job. And the only thing you can say about Ruben Amorim is since he got to Manchester United, he's putting players in positions where they can't succeed. And so in a situation like that, there seems no possible way that a manager, having gotten the results that he has since he went there, can possibly stay. He can't possibly stay. I mean, we were talking at the end of last season that if they don't start well, then, maybe come Christmas, he'll lose his job. Right now, Christmas seems a million miles away for this guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting to say. What's also interesting is that he has made some comments recently that we've, of course, been picking apart with a fine-tooth comb. And he had an interesting comment where he said, look, straight up, sometimes I hate my players and sometimes I want to quit now. I'm of a different era, Stevie, I understand, where I kind of like when managers are very candid like this, when it shows they're real. It's not the typical robotic media-trained answers that you're getting where, look, we all know that he himself probably cannot find a justifiable excuse for what we saw against Grimsby Town. But what have you made of his recent comments? And are you of the same view that I am?
Look, I guess we all like managers to be honest. But let me tell you, when you're the coach and you're in the firing line, you say as little as possible and say enough to get you out of there. That's what you do. I mean, Ruben Amorim, I have no idea what's going through this guy's head when he sits down at a press conference. I have to think that nobody at Manchester United is helping him or piping him about what you should and shouldn't say and how you should say it, because this guy is just an absolute dream for journalists. He comes out and you just don't know what he's going to say. Sometimes it's honest and obvious. And when he's been really honest, you actually can understand what he's saying. But at other times, you can't understand what he's going on about. It's all higgledy-piggledy. It's just hard to make sense of a lot of the things he says. But as you said, when he's straightforward and honest, then it's clear. And again, some of the things he says, particularly what you just relayed there, you shouldn't be saying that. Sometimes I feel like quitting. Sometimes I hate the players. I mean, seriously, that just makes no sense. And again, I don't think Manchester United as a club, certainly the people involved with the press side of things, the PR side of things, nobody's helping him. They are throwing him to the wolves.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's looking like. Well, we are reading your comments as well as your questions. Thank you so much for sending them in. Keep sending them in, Stevie. We have quite a few surprise for so far on Manchester United. You know, United is the gift that keeps on giving. This one says, which manager has Manchester United gotten the closest to sustainable success since the Sir Alex Ferguson days? Which one actually looks...
Well, if you ask Ten Hag, he would say it would be him.
I weirdly was going to say Ten Hag as well. I mean, the man did say he was brought in to win trophies, and that's exactly what he did. I
mean, in a crazy way, you got to say Ten Hag, because the others didn't win as many trophies as him. I can't even remember if they won any. But yeah, I guess you'd have to say Ten Hag, which once again turns you towards how bad things have been for Man United. When we're saying Ten Hag, the guy who we thought had taken them to rock bottom, but clearly didn't. So that would have to be the answer. Ten Hag.
Ten Hag, exactly. Not looking so bad now. Interesting question here now, too. All of Manchester United's youngsters are on the outs. Is Ruben Amorim to blame? And I find this one very interesting because it's actually true. Two players that I never thought would be questioning their future at Manchester United anytime soon was Alejandro Garnacho and now Amad Diallo, who I have mad respect for. I literally remember about 2 or 3 weeks ago, exactly 1 year ago, I was interviewing Amad Diallo after he had scored in the Snapdragon Cup champions, you'll never sing that, against Real Betis. And it felt like the beginning of a new era of Amad. Then he started putting out some really good performances for Manchester United. Fast forward to now, and we're talking about him potentially being on the way out, as well as Kobbie Mainoo, as well as Alejandro Garnacho. So is Amorim to blame for this?
Do you know, I actually don't think Amorim has to take the blame for this particular problem. I think it's over time, the culture at Manchester United, the culture that was all about everybody together, looking after each other. If somebody stepped out of line, then everybody piled on them, keeping each other in check. I mean, they basically policed each other. That culture has completely disappeared at United. And so for young players coming into the first team, United is such a big club that it's very easy for them to get carried away with their success on the field. Unfortunately, they're not learning anything about team and looking after the guy standing next to you. All of those life things, as much as a team thing, is not there at United. So I wouldn't blame Amorim for that. I think the culture at United is toxic. Back in my day when players weren't playing, we used to call it the sour grapes gang. I mean, there was just everybody was roaming around, moaning and complaining and just sour pussies all over the shop. And Manchester United seems to be that,
Yeah, it seems like the culture has definitely gone there for what was such a promising academy at one point in time. Another fan question is saying, is it fair to say that Ruben Amorim might be the worst manager post Sir Alex Ferguson? Maybe David Moyes, only the other one?
I think that's harsh on Moyes, to be quite honest with you.
I mean, well, he did at that point bring Manchester United to what was their lowest low in terms of finishing in the Premier League table. But now that 7th place position looks grand to me.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of Man United fans would take 7th right now. I absolutely think that Moyes wasn't given enough time. He certainly would have. Man United was steady under him. Unfortunately, under the previous manager, Fergie, they were exciting and they won trophies and they were exuberant and they had great players and they were good to watch. And so, unfortunately, Moyes, he was the fall guy for what needed changing, and time was needed to change things after Fergie. Moyes didn't get that. Had he gotten that, they wouldn't be in the position they're in right at this minute in time. That's for sure.
Stevie's sticking up for his Scotsman. Oh, I love the little Scottish union here. But fair play. That's actually something I agree with.
He's a ginger as well.
He is. He's a Scottish ginger, and you have to come, of course. Final question, I suppose, for this one, because there's another part to now after the Grimsby Town result that everyone is either going after Ruben Amorim or everyone is going after Bruno Fernandes. But that's also stemming from the game against Fulham and that whole penalty fiasco as well. But just once again, Bruno Fernandes, his leadership is being questioned. However, he still is what we could say is Manchester United's most valuable player at the moment. He ended up being the top scorer last season. He still is the captain. He still is someone that you can trust to score goals on his day. Maybe not that penalty, but Stevie, on this Bruno Fernandes situation, what do you feel needs to happen? Because it's getting to what could be a toxic situation.
Well, again, I go back to, what should be the most important thing at any club, and that's the team. And right now, Manchester United need money in order to change the squad. And sometimes you have to make a sacrifice. And personally, if you can get a huge amount of money for Bruno Fernandes, then I think you take it and then you try and change and bring some new faces and some strong characters and some strength. And I think United, more than ability, need strength, and they need people they can rely on. Mm-hmm. Players that you know exactly what you're going to get. Players that will get everybody around them. As I said, strong characters that will bring the team together. And to me, that's the middle of the park. Right now, regardless of the opposition, whether it's Liverpool, whether it's Grimsby, maybe even non-league that we were talking about, anybody and everybody can get at United. And so for me, they need to strengthen the middle of the park and make sure that the opposition can't get through. And then you start building forward. But to do that, you need money.
Yeah.
And I guess right now, Bruno Fernandes is the saleable asset. And quite frankly, let's be honest, Bruno Fernandes, as good as he can be, he looks as though he's a frustrated person on that field. He looks frustrated all the time. And actually, United are not getting the best out of him because they can't keep the ball, they can't get it back. So, are you going to keep a player who's not getting on the ball enough? Or do you think about the team and sell that asset and make the team better all round. So, in my opinion, I think that would be the best move. And I'm pretty sure Bruno Fernandes wouldn't be too disappointed to get out of Manchester United and go somewhere and be able to play football and relax and not have a ton of bricks on his shoulders every time he steps on, particularly at Old Trafford.
Yeah, honestly, most of the time when I say Bruno Fernandes, I just want to buy him a strong adult beverage because it looks like he definitely needs one. He and I both, indeed. But let's move on now, thankfully, and look at some of the other fixtures in the Premier League. As we said, Manchester United will be in action on Saturday. But there is another game of the weekend that we have our eye on, Stevie, and that is Liverpool Arsenal. Let us just start there because that is definitely the game of the weekend. We were talking about Liverpool, Newcastle. That would be a big test for Arne Slot, I suppose, especially with all of the issues going on with Alexander Isak and whether or not that transfer is going to happen or not. But now this is a true test because we're expecting these two, along with Manchester City here and there. We have yet to be convinced there, but these are the two that we're expecting to be gunning for that Premier League title. So how do you see this one going?
Do you know, this is to me, this is a strange and a tough one to call. Arsenal don't have a great record at Liverpool. But both sides, in my opinion, haven't started, in terms of the way they've played, haven't started particularly well. They've both got victories, but they haven't impressed. Either side haven't impressed me. Arsenal have got injury worries. You know, there's a probability that Odegaard won't be able to start. We know Bukayo Saka won't be starting. So we're not quite sure what Arsenal are going to do. And Liverpool, I would expect McAllister to come back in. The question is, do you stick with Wirtz in that middle three? Because, again, he hasn't particularly produced what he's capable of going forward. And he really doesn't give you an awful lot defensively. So this is a tough one for me. You know, we're not looking at two sides that we think are going to be going for the title in good form. As I said, they've both got victories, which at the end of the day is the key. When you're not at your best, if you can get wins, then that will come the end of the season. Those wins really do matter. So I think it's a tough one to call. I'm actually going to go for a draw because Liverpool, they got 9 goals in 3 games. So without playing particularly well, they got 9 goals. That shows you that what they have going forward. Regardless of what's going on behind them, they can put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Liverpool, though, regardless of the goals that the forwards are scoring, they can't keep a clean sheet to save their life. They've lost 6 in 3. So that's why I think this has got a draw written all over it. Arsenal's not at their best. Liverpool's not at their best. Both can score goals, but both can let goals in as well.
Well, with that said, because I suppose some of the managers will say, look, we can not take it a little easy on the pitch, but in terms of any sorts of criticism, it's earlier on in the season. They're trying to incorporate new signings with their systems, their philosophies, etc., etc. So how does Arne Slot approach this game? Because I feel like all the outside noise is going to want Liverpool to play this like a final.
Yeah, I need to correct myself there. Actually, Arsenal, I don't think I've lost a goal in the Premier League. So I shouldn't say they both lose goals. I definitely know Liverpool are losing goals. That's for sure. Look, normally when Liverpool are at home to Arsenal, it is from the first whistle, it's a cavalry charge and get after them. But as I said, because of the form that Liverpool's in, I'm not so sure that's going to be the case. I think Arne Slot has to think about the problems they have defensively, and that means they have to strengthen the middle of the park. I think that is the key for this game. And to do that, that means that you're going to have to move Wirtz. And where do you move him? Do you move him to the left-hand side? That would be unfair on Gakpo. He really, to me, has been a threat. Do you drop Wirtz? I mean, it's a conundrum from Arne Slot. But Liverpool in the middle of the park, so far, this campaign, a bit like United, have been too easy to get at. Haven't been able to stop anybody getting at the back four, and the back four haven't been producing. So for me, Arne Slot has to look at the big picture and look at the shape of the side and how can we stay strong and how can we first of all not give anything away. Because as I said, they've got talent up front where They only need some half chances, and boy, that ball ends up in the back of the net. So I think it's interesting. I think it really is. I think we may get a surprise, and we might not see Florian Wirtz.
Well, like I said, that's the one we are all looking forward to this weekend in the Premier League. We touched a little bit on Manchester United, Burnley. Don't need to go back into that one. Spurs, though, they're up against Bournemouth. Bournemouth definitely love to put up a fight, make things frustrating. But Spurs on a high, coming off of what was a surprising victory over Manchester City away from home as well. How do you see this one going, Stevie?
Wow, it's tough not to see a Spurs win. You know, as good as Bournemouth were against Liverpool, they lost 4 goals. You know, it's one thing to say we played well and we scored a couple, but you lose 4 goals. And regardless whether it's at Anfield or not, that's not good. And it shouldn't be a surprise. Half of their back line from last season obviously was transferred, Tyson and Kerkez. And so that's tough to replace. And the fact that Spurs have been so solid, so good, both defensively and going forward, I find it really hard not to see a Spurs victory here. Bournemouth will play good football because they do, but I think Spurs will be too organised and will have too much going forward. And so I can see a Spurs win here.
Everyone's loving a Thomas Frank Spurs. Everyone's already forgotten the Ange Postecoglou Spurs, and everyone loved the Ange ball when it was working.
And actually, Thomas Frank isn't doing Ruben Amorim any favours. Ruben Amorim was complaining about not getting pre-season and not getting time to train and not this, and I didn't have that. And then Thomas Frank's gone into Spurs, and in such a short space of time, shown that, you know, he can coach and he can figure it out. As I said, that doesn't help Amorim, but certainly great for Spurs and Spurs players.
And final one now, Manchester City, they have to bounce back after, I'm sure they'll still be hurting from that Spurs victory, even though we are giving Spurs a whole lot of respect for what Thomas Frank has been doing so early on there. They're going all the way down south to Brighton. Brighton as well can put up a fight on their day, Stevie, especially when they sense a wounded Man City at the Amex. How do you see this one?
This is a dangerous one for City. You know, I wasn't particularly impressed with Brighton last week. But as you said, they are at home. They got the big boys, Man City, coming to town. So you know they're going to be up for it. The crowd's going to be up for it. I think I'm going to sit on the fence with this. You know, Man City defensively have been really poor. I mean, last weekend against Spurs, they should have lost more goals than they actually did. And going forward, they were absolutely blunt. I mean, they looked as though they'd never played together as a forward line. So I'm going to sit on the fence here, and I'm going to say it's a draw.
Another draw for the 2 interesting fixtures, Stevie. Tisk, tisk. All right, well, what about Chelsea-Fulham before we wrap? Because that's a little London derby, a little West London derby. Yeah,
you got to go for Chelsea. As much as anything, because they're at home. You know, Fulham were a little... So far in these opening games, they've been a little inconsistent, up and down. They go through patches where they play really good football. Not quite sure whether they look as though they're going to score many goals, though. And then there are times in games where they just disappear. So I think Chelsea's going to have far too much for them at home. I can see a Chelsea victory here.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, as always, Stevie Nicol. Thanks to everyone for tuning in and for sending in your questions. Speaking of Chelsea Fulham, we'll be back here on ESPN FC Live with Janusz Mihalik after that game for post-match reaction and for the rest of the Premier League action on Saturday. So please join us here on YouTube.